So hi everyone, we're just about to start and just waiting for a few more folks to stream in. So just hold on and yeah, we have Nadeen as well.
Hi, Raghav.
Hi, I have enough. Nadeen, I think we're good to start. So I think we can kick off.
Okay. So persons are on Raghav and Abhinav.
Correct. Yes, for Claron, we're good to start.
Hi, Nadeen.
Hi, Abhinav. Good to see you, Raghav. Good to see you. Welcome, everybody. Really excited to be hosting you today. My name is Nadeen Matthews Blair, founder and CEO of Crescent Advisory Group. I'm joined today by my partners from Fluid AI, Raghav and Abhinav Agarwal, who are both co-founders. And excited to talk to you today about how, with generative and agentic AI, businesses in the Caribbean can really leapfrog and accelerate their digital and AI transformation and experience positive outcomes in terms of their growth, their efficiency, and customer experience. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Please keep the chat active. We're going to have Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop questions throughout. I'm going to share my slides now and take you through the agenda for today and what we'll be discussing. All right, so a little bit about Fluid AI. They're an amazing team, and they specialize in conversational AI and AI analytics. They've served over 60 clients across the globe, not just in the Caribbean. I want to make sure that's clear. Well-known names such as Bank of America, RBC, Barclays, and closer to home, brands like NCB, JMMB, Guardian Group. We would have met each other and worked with each other from my days at NCB, and they have been recognized by Partner, Forbes, 30 under 30, and Microsoft's AI's First Movers Program. Just a little bit about me, currently CEO of Crescent Advisory Group, as I mentioned, but I've spent over 20 years across National Commercial Bank Jamaica Limited, McKinsey and Company, and JP Morgan Chase. At NCB, most notably, I spearheaded its AI powered digital transformation, launching its first agile software lab and solutions such as facial recognition, onboarding, machine learning, predictive analytics models for loans, and chatbot powered solutions, many of which were supported by Fluid AI. So today, we're going to spend a couple of minutes just doing some quick demos in terms of generative AI solutions out there that are quite powerful, which can enhance the productivity of your team. Then Raghav and Abhinav are going to take us through agentic AI, which is the next layer, and talk about how we can use it in terms of a practical roadmap. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I'm getting some feedback. Genevieve, Raghav, Abhinav, I'm not sure. Check on that for me, please. And then finally, we're going to open it up at the end for some Q&A. So let me just set some context very quickly, because I know you have been reading and hearing some of the feedback around generative AI, agentic AI. And there is this paradox that was called out by McKinsey and Company: high AI adoption, and very little reported in terms of successes. And we're seeing that for a number of reasons. So lots of pilots happening. Lots of organizations have invested in tools such as Copilot for their teams. However, there's a bigger conversation that needs to happen around AI. So one is in terms of you have invested in Copilot, but have you trained the team? Have we started to reconstruct the procedures and the workflows that they are using so that they can start to integrate the tool? The second one is around governance. In some cases, organizations have adopted AI policies, and the policies are so heavy that team members are actually afraid to use the tools. And the second side of it is there is no framework, and so teams are afraid to use the tools. And so resolving that conundrum is going to be important to starting to make progress, to seeing the results. And finally, the productivity plan. The productivity gains are clear. They have been proven in studies across Wharton, Harvard, and what we're not seeing is the capture of those. So if a team member is able to save 5 to 10 hours a week, we haven't really made a decision or be intentional about how do we redeploy those hours. And of course, there's a broader conversation around, you know, employee layoffs and employees seeing that as the primary goal of AI, which causes change management and adoption challenges. One of the use cases I love is IKEA, who a couple of years ago, through chatbots, were able to free up 8,500 employees. They redeployed those employees to a new business line, which in the first year generated $1.4 billion. And so Raghav, Abhinav, and I really believe in this leapfrog opportunity for the Caribbean. And the most comparable example would be landline, where we were behind seemingly um, in terms of landline penetration. However, with mobile, we were able to leapfrog, and the penetration of mobile devices in the Caribbean is higher than in many other territories. So we don't want to diminish the various challenges that we have with digital transformation in the Caribbean, everything from integration issues to operational challenges and leadership's ability to focus. But we believe that a similar opportunity exists leveraging generative and agentic AI. So with traditional digital transformation, we have to spend a lot of time building the APIs, integrating the systems. By the way, this is still within the context of doing the appropriate leadership and change management work and really making sure that we bring the team and our customers along. But technically, there's a lot of building AI, integrating systems, legacy systems in particular, standardizing and cleaning data, and that translates into years of implementation. What we've seen with the agentic AI implementation so far is that we're able to work with what you have, directly connecting with your existing telephony and email systems, reading flat files, CSVs, scanned documents, perfect data. Data is important, but perfect is not necessary to start. And in many instances, we can implement in weeks as opposed to years. And with both, there's continuous learning and improvement. And a big part of that enablement on the agentic AI side is model context protocol. I'll show you that in a real sense in some of the demos we'll do shortly. But because there's this now universal standard that allows applications to talk to each other and talk to AI, we are able to accelerate a lot faster in terms of getting things to live and to implementation. So I am going to demonstrate a few demos that I think will be particularly helpful for persons who sit in the C-suite and their teams. Simple ways that you can use the tools to capture productivity every day. And then we'll jump into what we can do from an agentic standpoint. So I'm going to show you 4 things today: how we can leverage Claude skills and Copilot agent to generate proposals. This can be proposals, board reports, anything that's standard that you produce. You can train these tools to produce it regularly for you with defined inputs. Then I'm going to show you how you can use Claude to create a dashboard. I'm going to show you deep research, and finally, how we can use these platforms for training video and SOP creation. So let's dive in. So I'm gonna start with the Claude demonstration. So what I have here is an intake form that I sanitized, and the intake form is from someone who's interested in an AI workshop. And I've built a Claude skill trained on my proposals that I've done in the past, so it learns how I like to do proposals. So once I have uploaded it and referenced my skill, I will put Claude to work. So it's reading the AI workshop skill. It's now reading the CSV file that I uploaded. And typically, when I talk to clients, this is something that takes a very long time, hours at minimum. Yeah, in some cases, days. So here it is. It's starting to pull up the proposal in chat. It has an executive summary, which I've trained it to do. It has research that it went on the web, which I would validate. It gives a workshop overview, objectives, program content. So we're seeing it's pulling up all of this in minutes. The workshop strategy, the deliverables, key performance indicators, what the investment would be, the payment terms, my bio, testimonials. It's trained on all of this information and next steps, right? So once it does that and I'm okay with it, I would then say, go ahead and put it in Word. So one of the things that Claude does very well, you can train it on your brand standards as well. And so it can put together documents. And I did one for Kingston Wars recently, where using its brand format, we were able to replicate a monthly report showing in their brand colors. All right, so it's going to work on that. And I'm going to jump over to Copilot and do the same thing. So I created an agent within Copilot. This is one of the more popular tools we see across enterprises in the Caribbean as well as North America, because that trust of Microsoft is there. And so I gave it the same CSV, and I'm now giving it the same prompt. Now you'll notice that these tools think before they start, because it's not just a simple chat experience. It has to reference the materials it was trained on in order to pull up and start to create the particular artifact that you need. So here we see that it's putting this together. It will look fairly standard because, again, there's a standard template that I trained both of them in. I've trained Claude and I've trained Copilot, one, because I do these demos, but also as a backup because these tools go down. So with Cloudflare, ChatGPT went down last year around November. Recently, Claude went down. And so it's important to have resiliency and understand what would happen from a business continuity standpoint when your AI tools go down. So there we have the one generated by Copilot. It's not formatted, yes. And so the next one I'm going to jump into is I've uploaded a set of data from Kaggle, open source data, and it has payroll information, credit card information, checking account information. Now you would only upload sensitive data in enterprise robust AI platforms that you've built for your organization. So this is for demonstration purposes. And again, this is not anyone's confidential data. So I've asked it to use the attached data to create a dashboard in PowerPoint and Excel. So we'll take a few minutes. In the meantime, I'll head back over to Claude. And here you see it has generated a formatted word proposal. This is actually my brand standard for the Crescent Advisory Group. And so in minutes, you have a sales proposal. So in minutes, similarly, you could have a monthly report, a monthly dashboard, a weekly report, anything that you do and you have a format, you can easily create that with a Claude skill. So I have a prompt that I'd love to share that you can utilize to help you to generate your own Claude skill. If you are a Claude user, please feel free to screenshot that before we move forward. All right, so just a few examples of what you can create. If you're a realtor, property listings, software, business requirements, contact reports. So taking the transcript from an AI note taker, putting it into a skill because you have a particular format and having that generate quite easily in a branded format, sales decks, proposals, monthly reports. This is a screenshot of a dashboard that I created in Claude as well. And we'll see the live one that I've just input instructions for. Deep research is another fantastic capability. So Supreme Ventures was scheduled to be on this call. So I use Supreme Ventures as a test case in Claude, in ChatGPT, in Gemini, in Copilot. It has deep research functions. So this means you go beyond the regular chat and you select the research option. And so I input a prompt to get a detailed overview of Supreme Ventures. I said, listen, I'm coming in as, looking for a senior role and tell me everything that you can tell me: financial performance, customer insights. Employee insights is one that many of my clients typically get surprised by in the Caribbean because many of our team members are actually posting things on platforms like Indeed. And so there are employee sentiments that are out there that you should definitely be aware of. So here we have what Claude produced, which is 17 pages of research supported by sources. Now, this is helpful for when you want to do deep research either on yourself or another topic or organization. And it's important to also dig into the sources to make sure that they are valid. One of the things that I encourage my clients to do is to perplexity yourself. And many of us Google ourselves and we see what's out there. Increasingly, from a search standpoint, persons are going directly to AI and not to Google. And so it's important for us to understand, what does AI say about us? What is AI saying about our business? And what's the source of that truth? And Perplexity is fantastic in that it gives the sources. And so if you have your devices nearby, feel free to go to perplexity.ai and say, please tell me about Nadeen, Mary Brown from Supreme Ventures or Mary Brown from Jamaica. And then you can say, please tell me about this company and see what it says. You want to see how your brand is being represented on AI. And if you don't like that, then there are intentional actions that you can take. This is a prompt that you can screenshot and do some deep research on your own company and seeing how AI fits into that picture and what some of your competitors are doing. So feel free to screenshot that. And the last thing I'll share is creating SOPs, standard operating procedures. They're typically these very long documents that no one wants to go through. Employee onboarding also can be, very exhausting for organizations that have to do this over and over again. And so there are AI avatar platforms like Synthesia, like Heygen, that allow you to create avatars, custom avatars. They allow you to have those created in your own tone of voice now, which is very nice, so that it doesn't misrepresent the accent or the feel that we're going for. So this is an example of one from Synthesia. You can create your own avatars, but I'll just play a little bit of this.
Did you know the first interaction can make or break the entire onboarding process? Sales and service advisors play a crucial role in gathering accurate customer information. Logging in.
So that's one. And then this is one that I created for a training that I uploaded on prompting, but couldn't do it myself. Prompt engineering is not very difficult when we think about our AI assistants in the same way we think about an intern, a new hire, or an assistant. We can consider these persons as individuals with lots. So that's based on my avatar, which was created from a real photo, and then it was asking me questions. Oops. And then we can upload a presentation, we can create a script, and it creates that quite nicely. So these are just a few ways that we can use existing generative AI tools that are accessible and quite affordable to improve some of the day-to-day processes for your team. But like I mentioned earlier, training, governance, as well as figuring out or being intentional about what we're going to do with the productivity that we unlock is going to be important. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Abhinav and Raghav to take us through the world of agentic AI and some of the amazing things that are available to you as Caribbean organizations.
Thank you, Nadeen. And I think that was very insightful. Some of the solutions you talked about are really at the forefront of generative AI. I think you talked a lot about cloud skills, and that's an area which is becoming very exciting. Things like proposal writing, dashboarding. I think if you're not using Claude today, you're missing on something, and definitely it's allowing small businesses to sort of really compete with the biggest because you don't need a big team anymore, and that's what's really exciting to us. So going a little further from generative AI, which you've talked about, what's exciting us about the Caribbean is now agentic AI, right? Because generative is great, but it needs a human in, a human out, where the AI does processes, but it gets it back to you. With agents, you're sort of able to run things on autopilot, right? So it's almost taking all the concepts you talked about and turbocharging them and making them fully automated. And we are seeing Caribbean businesses really, take this to the next level in terms of saying, hey, the same leapfrog philosophy, right? Even if we were behind in the digital transformation era, is this an opportunity for all of us to sort of really, just leapfrog, go from the landline to the mobile phones and do that? So you've already talked a little bit about us. We've been doing generative and agentic AI for the last 4 years. In fact, our first implementation was with the HSBC, where we did agentic AI way back even before the launch of ChatGPT. And we've done this, across the Caribbean as well as in Jamaica. So we now do over 10 financial institutions in the Caribbean, everyone from NCB, JMMB, to CWCJU, CIBC, Belize Bank, GBTI. And Jamaica has been a leader in this space, wherein we're seeing these three groups sort of work with us and move forward. We also launched the AI After Warren, which was a after you could speak to and Warren could speak back to you. It was for the 100th anniversary of Forbes, and you showed a little bit of how Synthesia and Hadrian are doing this. We launched this way back in 2017, and it's something we're very excited about. This whole avatarization, the ability for someone to be created in an AI avatar and speak and experience it. We also wrote the world's first AI written book called Bridging the AI Gap a month before ChatGPT. It's a bestseller. We're coming out with our next book, which is called 10x Your Productivity Using AI, and that's going to be published by Penguin. So, very excited for that as well. So, what is agentic AI? And I think, to sort of really say that, how does it move forward from Gen AI? Because both of them are these interrelated terms and it's confusing. Abhinav, would you want to sort of kick in and talk a little bit about that Gen AI to agentic kind of space?
Yeah, absolutely, Raghav. I think the traditional format used to typically be this, right? Like you had the human prompt something, an AI system would listen to it and then respond, and then the human would review it, and then they would kind of go through this cycle multiple times over, right? And you could talk about this for work, for content generation, for image and video generation, for even like analyzing data, for anything. uh, and what we're essentially moving a lot more towards is you kind of go even more high level. You kind of give it your goal or larger idea. The agentic AI system automatically figures out the right prompt that it needs to throw. It'll then go ahead and do the generation, and then it actually moves to the right, which is now maybe we can hover your mouse over it, but where the agent actually reviews its own work, and then yes, that part. So the agent reviews its own work, critiques it, gives feedback, and that goes back into the AI system. And that happens a couple of times before it actually finally hits the human reviewer. So what that essentially now allows is far better outcomes when it comes to how these agents work, right? Because um, you know you could have something like a Claude generate the first version, or Gemini generate a video, and Claude critique and review it, and then the AI takes that feedback. And you could even try this at home. So while we set these up for banks and oil and gas and other institutions to kind of just work out of box, you could actually try this at home by asking ChatGPT maybe to generate an image. Have a goal in mind, ask it to generate it, take that same goal, same image, and ask another AI to say, okay, critique it and feedback it. Let's say ask Gemini or Claude to give feedback, and then take that feedback and put it back into ChatGPT and have it generate again. The quality of that image will be far superior, right? And so essentially, if you do that loop a couple of times, and if you do it automated without having to do a lot of this manual copy paste, you can actually go many steps ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that, Abhinav. And that's what we are saying, that there is an ability to sort of do this in an agentic friendly fashion. Obviously, you need to have your budgeting strong because, when you do agentic, it can get expensive quickly. So it needs to be done in a guardrailed fashion. But this is the reality, right? We're seeing things like ChatGPT explode, 18 billion messages, 700 million users, and now something like Anthropic exploding in the enterprise. And the demand from our customers is that can your business have the same kind of experience that they're seeing on a ChatGPT, that they're seeing on a Gemini? So one of the key areas we've been working a lot on is the onboarding experience. Now, anyone in the regulated financial sector or in telecom, etc., you know how challenging onboarding can be. And what we have been able to do using agentic AI is grab a lot of the documents folks are uploading, connect to different databases, to different government sources using tools like MCP, which Nadeen was talking about, and really on board really quickly in less than maybe a few minutes, right? Which was a process that would take days in the old manual world. So while I play the video, Abhinav, would you want to sort of talk through the philosophy of how a quick onboarding can happen using agentic?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So here we have like a team of AI agents. So something that's actually going up, looking up the relevant system, or chatting with the customer, getting this is a merchant onboarding process, right? Or a customer KYC onboarding process. Something that gets all the data in. You could connect to a new gen system if needed. We have another agent that processes the documentation. We have another agent that looks up core systems. And that's where, it starts to get very, very complex as you start scaling up these use cases. But here it's so phenomenal, right? So you'll throw in all the data. The AI is going to do a real-time validation. You'll have all the documentation that's been uploaded by the merchant, or the new user that's doing KYC in this case, and the AI is going to just figure out what is what, do its own validations. Pick out details from the check, pick out details from the store photos, figure out which merchant category to allocate it to, and literally process all of this completely autonomously, and kind of essentially guide through an entire underwriting process. And the beauty is that once you've created this agentic workflow, and here you can see, right, like it's captured from the identity card, the data, from the checkbook, the data. It's also figured out in the table what's different in terms of what's a match, what's not a match. And now it's kind of moving towards a bank verification or penny drop process. But what's beautiful in this whole structure is that once you set up an agentic AI like this, it's constantly repeatable and available to everyone in the organization, right? So hundreds of onboarding employees get access to this who are doing this onboarding. It connects to the core system, so it can automatically pull and do this onboarding. It's made available to the customers, but you have this one standardized AI that's proven, tested, and then scaled out.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is our very first use case. We feel a lot of Caribbean institutions really struggle with the onboarding process. It's a fairly slow process, and we believe this can be a real game changer in the region. The second one is the actual customer experience, right? So that's the onboarding. The customer has come on board, but if you're any kind of services business, you're sort of having to interact with their customers across multiple channels, right? Email, WhatsApp, phone, and it's hard to find talent in those areas, right? Typically high attrition. You want to find employees, but no one really wants to stick around. How do you sort of support these peaks and troughs that hit your customer support, right? Everyone's calling at a particular time, and there are times when no one's calling or no one's emailing, right? And how do you staff for something like that? And that's where we believe agentic AI can really help across these three channels. I'm going to quickly show you how it's done on email, and then we'll talk about on chat and voice as well. And do you want to walk through the email use
Karthik,
case?
you have to switch off the audio.
So what we're seeing out here is
Audio.
that the emails can be auto answered by the AI bots. It can also do 100% SLA, right? So typically, most organizations in the Caribbean are maybe responding to emails the same day, maybe 30 to 40% time. But with these email bots, you have 100% hit rate. They can also ask back queries, right? So if the customers provided limited information, it doesn't mean that they just hang up, right? They actually ask back that, hey, we need this further information to really sort of go ahead and solve the query. The same thing happens on chat as well. So these bots can be embedded in your website, they can be on your mobile app, and these different AI agents. And I'm just going to show you this demo briefly to sort of show you how complex these systems can get, and show you how detailed these kind of flows can be. So let me show you this action. So if you see all these little blue boxes, they are actually the different AI agents that are interacting, right? They're all connected to the different systems, and they allow us to sort of quickly sort of go ahead and say, okay, if something's connected to core banking, something's connected to credit card system, something's connected elsewhere, and it can all be embedded all within your bank's website, right? So it's something that's very smooth, very easy to do, and something that's very powerful as well to sort of get going. So just going to quickly show you this video in action, and then so you can have actually chat queries going on. In this case, the user said, hey, I want to block my card, and the system will actually follow the authentication mechanism that is there, right? So it's not as if just because it's AI, it's just going to do everything. It can actually connect to different authentication agents, have those guardrails in place. So here it's asking for a TRN. The user types in their TRN, and then we go from there. So I'm not going to go too deep in this because I want to show it to you in a voice kind of interface, which is more exciting. But again, yes, it's all possible on text chat. The great thing out here is, unlike the bots of old, I think we've all dealt with bots wherein it was okay, press one for your account balance, two for your statement, three for blocking a card. The user is just free flowing chatting as if he was chatting with a friend on WhatsApp, right? So they can change context, they can move between, and the different AI agents are working as a team to actually solve the customer's queries. But yes, so it's great on email, great on chat, and the same can be on WhatsApp. Customers are still calling in. So how do we get that right? That's where we're most excited about the AI voice callers, right? These voice callers are wherein you can have actual conversations with these AI agents on phone and all the time. So let me show you a brief call of this in action.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good.
Nice. How can I help you?
Could you block my card, please?
I'll be right back with that information. Hang tight. I can assist you with the card block process. However, you would need to be authenticated
Could you
first.
check my credit card balance first?
One moment, I'm checking on that now. I can assist you with checking your card balance, but you would need to be authenticated first. Please provide your tax registration number, TRN, so we can proceed with the authentication.
Sure, it's 12674532.
All right, let me get that for you. Thank you for providing your TRN. However, I also need the last four digits of your card to complete the authentication process. Could you please provide that information?
9123.
All right, let me check. Your card balance for the card ending with 9123 is 1532. Since you're already maintaining a balance of 1532, you're eligible for our new Fluid Premium checking account. It offers high interest rates, free international transfers, and exclusive.
Raghav, you're on mute, I think.
So that's where the AI is getting not confused, right? The user first asks for a card block, then they move to saying, hey, instead of a card block, I want my balance. When the user gave his balance, the system said, hey, there's an opportunity to upsell because this user has a high balance. So I may be able to sort of, give them a offer for a premium checking card. So it seamlessly moved between these paradigms, and it could sort of really convince the customer as it goes along. And the same thing can be done in a very local manner as well. So let me show you this. Maybe just not ship it of how we can have it do different dialects, different tones, different terminologies.
Fluid AI's agentic platform now speaks. It lets you switch a listen.
Hello.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
I actually wanted to know my credit card balance. Do you speak in Jamaican patois?
Sure thing. I can help you with that. Please give me your
Okay, do
card
you
number.
also speak Spanish?
Sí, claro. Puedo hablar en español.
Oh,
So you can see the seamless change, right? We could do something like a patois, we move to Spanish, and the user doesn't need to necessarily even, change a phone number or press a button. All you say is, hey, I want it in Spanish, I want, and it can manage those intermixes, right? Typically, people may be speaking a mix of Spanish, English, etc. So you can now serve a global audience, right? You are not limited by the languages that your customers speak. One of the key use cases we are very excited about is the simple AI bots for the website, right? Where you just dump your website in and the AI can pick up all the information. Anytime your website's updated, the AI is updated instantaneously. And it's a great marketing tool, right? In the past, to maintain an AI chatbot was a full-time task, right? Because we're always changing the information, tweaking it. But now, because it's connected to the website, these go live in as quick as 30 days. There's no IT effort needed, and they can be on your website from day one. All right. A lot of people ask us, how do we do this, right? So the way we start off with this, we give the AI agent first to the human teams, and it supports them. Then we move to email, then live chat, and then phone. So it's an actual implementation that we do at a lot of Caribbean financial institutions where they move up this curve in as short as 2 months, but we de-risk at each step so that no one is under any kind of risk at any stage, right? We move from humans being completely in the loop to email, which is an asynchronous channel, to live chat, and then to the phone call. So we've been doing this. We have now 6 Caribbean institutions, 3 more going live. And what's really exciting is in 2 years, your customers are going to be use ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini to have their own AI agents. So it's important to you to have your AI agents which can talk to these agents in an agent-to-agent framework and really take this to the next level. Another key use case we're seeing is the branch productivity, right? It's been difficult for Caribbean institutions to give Copilot to everyone in their organization, right? It's a high license fee product. While we're trying to give it to everyone, it sometimes becomes a hit and a miss, right? You may want to give it to only 20 people, 25 people. But what if you have a branch network or an offline employee network of thousands of folks? Here we are seeing technology where these AI agents, instead of charging per user, are charging per concurrent user, right? So maybe at a single point in time, you don't need to give more than 30 to 40 users or 50 users the ability to query the AI, right? So this is the ability where we are able to upload all the organizational information, either it be in databases or it be in flat files, and then just simply ask questions, get answers, and get where that information is coming from. So it's a validated answer. Abra, would you like to quickly maybe just talk about this as we sort of walk through this?
Sure, I'll go. Um, yeah, I think the larger goal right over here is to ensure that at scale you have organizational level knowledge bases, and the AI is going in quickly giving answers, quoting sources, and essentially solving the user's problems really really quick. And that format essentially, with the right article, the right source, where is it getting the information from, really speeds up productivity and actually ensures that the biggest challenge is what document lies where, what's the answer to certain questions. We did a study that I think almost 40% of all users spend their time, like when you're literally sitting at a desk, in figuring out where the information is, how to do something. And especially in people places like branches, right? We've heard stories where people are like, "Well, I was just spending like 40 minutes figuring out how does this process work to do this particular transfer," or this customer was from an outside national, we'd never done a transaction like that, it took me 40 minutes to find the right document and the process. Once I found it, it took me literally 3 minutes to do it. And it just becomes a much faster way for the overall organization.
Perfect. Also, we're seeing the same impact in collections, right? So if you have a business where you have to collect from folks, maybe you're charging them posts, etc. These AI voice bots can make the phone call, they can get a promise to pay, they can figure out which customers are easy to collect from and which are more complex. So that's been another very powerful area. I'm going to skip ahead because I know we have limited time today, but it's a very similar kind of voice conversations that these AI voice bots can do. One thing we're very excited about is the coding and the programming side. Abhinav, would you like to talk a little bit about how AI agents are helping migrate old code and old legacy architectures into new areas?
Yeah, yeah. No, and Rao, while I'm going to explain it, you can actually have the video running in the back for this. I think it's on the next slide.
Okay.
But yeah, essentially, the biggest challenge, and you can just switch off the audio, I think. So the biggest challenge we're seeing with code writing is it's very, very painful. And a lot of banks have huge amounts of legacy code, right? That they need the AI, like they don't have the right developers. That developer that coded it like 5 years ago, and nobody knows where the documentation is for it. And you're really struggling to get that upgrade out, right? Or get that fix in. Whether it's understanding complex old code bases, refactoring them, migrating them to newer versions, more secure versions for a compliance perspective. You now have these coding agents that can sit in any terminal, in any development environment of the developer, and just become his AI assistant, with the entire setup being completely on-prem and air-gapped. So none of your critical code, none of your data moves out of your networks, but you still get the power of agentic autonomous coding, right? It's phenomenal in terms of solving that challenge that most CIOs, CTOs today face within banks, right? Which is a huge burden of legacy code, a shortfall of developers that are available to help with those migrations, get the work done, do the right security audits on the code, and getting quality and documentation out so that it's maintainable technology, maintainable code. And so therefore we have Fluid GPT Code that becomes this AI agentic coding assistant that just sits and helps modernize the entire infrastructure, and really relieve you of that challenge of handovers, developers not being present, code knowledge not being present, and just getting that work out in a fraction of the time, right? What would take probably 5 months could with 5 developers can now be done with 2 developers in 2 months, and that's phenomenal value for an organization.
Right. So quickly speeding through some other use cases, we're seeing AI smart factory, where AI is connecting unstructured, structured data, helping the factories perform better. We're seeing this also in areas such as uh, the car manuals, etc. So you can actually put in your entire manuals if you're doing electronic products. It can explain those answers, etc., to customers. Employee HR assistance is a quick win. We're seeing this as a use case that works very well in terms of what's out there. We're also seeing some interesting use cases around IT resolution, right? So any kind of IT documentation, etc. Helping internal IT folks, etc., get things done. So wide variety of use cases, customer experience, sales, marketing, HR, regulatory data analysis has been a very powerful one. We've seen stuff on the code side. So the question that is coming to a lot of people is that what is the use case? How do I select my best use cases, right? Because my entire organization wants to do use cases, but how do I select this? So we've come up by this 2x2 chart, which makes it very simple. Abhinav, would you like to talk a little bit about how does an organization go and select the right use case?
Yeah, Raghav, sure. So I think, typically when most organizations are selecting use cases, right? And I was talking to one of the CIOs, and he said we've got most of it covered, right? We figured out the business value, which is the ROI saving that we're getting, right? Either we're increasing revenue or we're reducing cost on something. So that's the business value side. We've got the feasibility, right? We've done a tech check with the vendor or with our internal tech teams, whether AI as of today can do this particular task or business process that we're looking out at. But he said we're still missing on getting the value out, and I don't know what's that element that I'm missing. And it was at that point that I explained to him that there's one key element in this that he's missing, right? So most people do these two parts. And so you have business value high to low, you have feasibility high to low, and then you typically start from the top, right? But people mistaken feasibility as only one part, which is technology feasibility. There's a whole other part to feasibility, which is process feasibility that people miss out, right? If I'm going to ask a person who's been working at this bank for 10 years now to say, hey, you've been using this screen, this interface for 10 years. Now, whenever a new KYC customer comes in, please go to this other screen and do a bunch of this other stuff that's totally different from the way you ever did it before. Chances are that after a few months of that implementation, users are going to divert back to their old way of working. And that's the same thing that happens with customers too, right? No matter how much we go to a customer and tell them, hey, please, whenever you have a request, don't call us. We have this new app. You can message us on the app, and the app will solve your challenge. You can see the data, you can see your balance on the app. Users still end up calling. So changing people's way of working and process flow is very, very hard, and often the most underestimated difficulty in deploying AI solutions. So design your processes such that the AI can just float in beautifully within the process, right? So if I'm doing, let's say, KYC, to my KYC example, rather than asking the user to go to a separate screen, in my current KYC processing workflow, the AI just logs into that system, processes those documents, and logs out and moves it to the next stage, which is the human stage. So when the human logs in, they're logging into the same interface, but a lot of the work is already done. Similarly, for customers, You add your AI layers either at voice, email, chat, in all of those layers. And so if the customer's calling in, and AI just picks up and talks to them, so they're not changing their way of working. And so that just my summary to this is that don't forget about process feasibility. That's a very, very key layer in AI success.
No, perfect, Abhinav. And I think one of the key other things we're seeing is try to take the agent live in 60 days, right? A lot of organizations get stuck in the process of, perfecting it, getting things right. But if you get the agent live in 60 days, you will get real world feedback and you won't be solving for mythical problems, but real problems. So even if it's a small sliver of the actual functionality, go live in 60 and then continuously iterate. Another area that we see a lot of people say is how do we manage the data, right? AI is data hungry. There's a lot of challenges with approvals from regulators, from teams. And we have been saying that you can do sovereign AI in the Caribbean. We've been helping institutions do this, wherein we launched local LLMs on local GPUs. We have the agentic platform in your customer infra or on your customer cloud, and none of the data is leaving. So that's a really different way of looking at how you can manage this in a very data secure format, but still go quickly. Other implementations are all across, right? So you can just have the LLMs in the cloud and still have everything resting on your cloud, your infrastructure. You can go with the public cloud where you maybe certain use cases where the data is not so critical, or it's easier data. You're okay with having in a public cloud. Then this is very quick to go live. Or if you need a very powerful model which is not available locally on a local GPU, then this is another model. The data is isolated. We're using a cloud LLM, so all these kind of permutations, combinations are available. A lot of people get scared. They say, hey, it's AI, it has to be in the cloud. Not necessary. You can work with all these kind of hybrid infrastructures to get things going and get them right. So that's it from us. Happy to hear your questions and queries and go from there. Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll be taking questions, comments in the chat. So we're here for next few minutes and looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your questions.
Nadeen, while we wait for others to ask, I had a small question for you because I know you showed Claude, Gemini, and Chat. Which one are you seeing as the most responsive right now in the Caribbean, where folks are using it extensively?
The majority of persons in the Caribbean are using ChatGPT. Um, However, I I have switched to Claude as my primary general use LLM. And in my workshops with organizations, in demonstrating the capabilities and seeing higher adoption there. I also see higher adoption in the very niche, more tech-savvy persons who've heard
Yeah.
about Claude Cowork and Claude Code and have been excited to test out those tools. But ChatGPT continues to be the most popular tool in the Caribbean.
And how do and that's true. A lot of people now know that Claude is getting really powerful, but then
Yes.
they have this huge history, right? Because now all of them have memory, read all the models, and they're like, ChatGPT knows a lot about me, a lot about how I work, and Claude, I'm starting from scratch. Is there a way folks can easily move from ChatGPT to Claude, because of the history
It's
challenge?
very easy. So you can export your memory from ChatGPT essentially, and you're now able to upload that into Claude so that you don't have to start from scratch. That's a big worry of many persons. And I actually recommend, I know persons want to be on one or the other. Now, obviously, from an enterprise standpoint, we want to encourage persons to have one of the architectures that you spoke about in initial stages where they may be purchasing just a few enterprise licenses. We want to ensure that we encourage redundancy because, again, There, just like any technology, we've just gone through a hurricane in the region and we learned about backup, power backup through generators and solar and internet backup through Starlink. And so it's important to have backup in terms of your AI tools as well. And so, as I talk about that, Raghav and Abhinav, I just love for you to share kind of what are some of the resiliency and redundancy points built into these agentic workflows so that clients can feel confident that they will be able to detect challenges early and resolve and have business continuity.
Raga, why don't you take that?
Yeah, so I think that's an important question, Nadine. I think, how do we do resilience, right? Because with agents, and you're giving them such critical things like customer support or like customer onboarding, you can't afford to. So I think what we try to do is two things, right? Can we do multimodality? So your agent shouldn't be hooked to one agent provider, one model provider, right? As you said, Claude can go down, ChatGPT can go down, Gemini can go down. But how do we sort of have a agentic flow which can hot swap the models while maintaining accuracy, right? It's easy to hot swap. Everyone can hot swap a model, but do we have a second tested model which we're comfortable going to in a time of crisis or in a time of downtime of our primary model, right? So one is obviously having hot swappability, but having that infrastructure tested so that once you need to implement hot swappability, it's good to go. And the second thing is, I think a lot of people have not considered it in the Caribbean, but we are really encouraging. Can you have at least a sliver of it on-prem, right? Can you have some local GPUs running some on-prem models so that you're not dependent on a cloud provider who tomorrow says, "Hey, your rates are up 10x," or we don't no longer do business in territory Y or territory Z. You have a level of independence because the open source models, especially the ones by NVIDIA, by Mixtral, are all getting very powerful. And it's an opportunity to sort of go off the per token pricing to just having your GPUs running these more efficient models. So those would be sort of my two cents, two approaches on resilience.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Raghav. And I'm seeing there's a question. Someone has asked, hearing a lot about AI and all these use cases, but for us here, it still feels a bit early stage. How do we actually start small, but still see real impact, not just testing and pilots? So Raghav and Abhinav, I'll allow you to start, and then I'll jump in with my thoughts.
Yeah, there's a really interesting story here about if you've seen the two most iconic buildings of our decade, or not of our decade, but actually of our generation, right? It's typically the Sydney Opera House and the Guggenheim Museum in New York. Both really beautiful, right? And both of them kind of came up with this idea of building like this amazing structure. So they both had this competition, but of selecting the best of selecting a winning design and architect. And one of them, spoiler alert, the Sydney Opera House was 10 times over budget. It took 8 years longer to finish. Whereas the Guggenheim Museum was built 5% under budget and finished within the exact time that they'd scheduled. Right? And the reason why one delivered so much value and one didn't, and I'm going to kind of roll this back into how AI is deployed these days, but was essentially the Sydney Opera House folks went and said, "Hey, this is a winning design. Someone do that beautiful sailboat design," and said, "Next month let's break ground." And they started making it, and then they realized, wow, there's a lot of impracticalities to this. It's going to cost a lot more. How do we make the sail stand, etc. With the Guggenheim, they said, okay, here, they got a beautiful design. They said, you know what, you're the winning architect. You figure out the right design. And that architect kind of took a room the size of a house, built a plaster of Paris version, called people in, saw it, everyone liked it, then built a bigger version in a hotel room. Again, did that for 3 months, and then built the final version. It was spot on, everything was figured out. And so the same goes with AI, right? You need to figure a small use case that can be deployed within 1 to 2 months that will deliver value. Find a vendor that can deliver it in that span, who's worked with a lot of customers in a similar region, in a similar setting. Because you don't, someone's experimenting for the first time themselves, like a vendor, which a lot of vendors are these days. You'll end up taking 6 months or something. I would have just taken 2 months because they're learning as you're learning, right? So get someone who knows it. Try and deploy something in 1 to 2 months. Pick up an easy fruit, right? Something that has inbuilt integrations or pre-built APIs that you want to talk to, right? So if it's KYC onboarding, or it's customer support for email, or live chat, um, deliver that value, see what worked, what didn't, and then keep iterating like the Guggenheim Museum, as opposed to kind of take on this massive project, like $1 million project, and say, okay, now I'm gonna transform, and then get stuck with this grand vision, right?
Thanks for that, Abhinav. And what I'll add to that is from a generative AI standpoint, because you kind of have to walk before you crawl before you walk. Yes, guys. One of the things I saw with a recent client, they were really excited to jump to coding and get some efficiencies there. Um, that's in terms of the leadership team. Had a workshop, exposed the team to a number of different tools. And we had a building session as part of that workshop. And every team member picked one of two use cases. They picked the one around training, and they picked the one around creating a Claude skill to do some kind of report, because many team members were so inundated with these activities that they really wanted to focus there. In another organization, we launched a hackathon, and so the team got a chance to play with the tools in a safe environment, and based on their experience, they were able to communicate to the leadership team what were the top two use cases that they would want to explore. That's a great way to build buy-in. I would say in both those experiences, the teams are able to see that AI will not replace them in those use cases, but it can really augment them quite a bit to help to alleviate the burden from some activities so that they can be freed up to do other things. When employees are able to experience that, in a real sense, then you get the buy-in. So that's another way in terms of determining a use case for implementation from a generative AI standpoint. And then again, as I mentioned in the beginning, training is important. You still need to put some basic um, guidelines around it. And then at the end of the day, you want to say, okay, team, with these productivity gains, what do we want to see? And it may not be, oh, more work, because already many employees feel behind with the work because of the reporting and those things. It literally may be, okay, getting that employee engagement level lift because they are able to transition more of their time into productive work. So, just a few thoughts on how you can start small and not be in a pilot per se, really having something that's useful for the organization. Thank you for that question. The next one is, how do you balance speed versus control with agentic AI, especially in regulated environments? That's a fantastic question. I'll throw that over to Fluid.
Raghav, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I think maybe I'll give some insight, and then you can sort of throw in more. I think definitely yes. You're sort of have an imperative from the market, right, to do this quick, because the customers are expecting it, right? They're using ChatGPT day in day out, and they're seeing the power, and they're saying, hey, why is your banking experience, or why is my customer experience with you guys still stuck in the 2010s, right? And then you have regulators who are really scared of AI, and they're giving you these massive 200-page, manuals or documents, saying follow everything out here, and no one really even knows how to do it. So What we are really saying is, can you sort of slice this down, right? Don't launch everything on day one, but really break it down into explainable pieces. So I'll give you an example, right? When we were doing customer support, one of the banks in the region was very excited to do voice first because they were like, we have 40% of the phone calls not even being answered. And we said to them, that's great, but regulation would require you guys to sort of have an explainable answer, explanation for every answer that the AI is giving. Can we sort of launch this for the human customer support agents first as an assistant to them? So they are giving it constant feedback. They're pointing it to the right document if it's referring to the wrong one, or if the document doesn't exist, they are uploading those documents to ensure that the documentation is correct, that everything in the document really reflects what they answer. Sometimes we all have those experiences, right? Employees tacitly know something and they're answering that, but when it's not reflecting in the official documentation. So we actually use that process to sort of almost have a human in the loop in the start. A lot of people think human in the loop is forever. But it's almost like a phase-wise thing, right? You use human in the loop in the start to sort of say, yes, let everything get reviewed by a human, let them sort of train the AI, let them guardrail and supervise it. And slowly you start then saying, okay, now that it's ready, can we expose it to the customer? Because we have explainability built in. We have humans who've used it for a month or two. And then you take out that loop, right? Because otherwise, a lot of people say, hey, it's just an assistant, right? It's not transformational if every query is still going to a human who's using an AI assistant. So he is 30, 40, 50% faster, but there is still that inherent non-scalability of a human process. So that's one way of really saying that yes, you start slow, but then you build up into something that's scalable and fast. Abhinav, would you want to add something there?
No, Raghav, I think you summed it up well.
All right, not seeing any other questions in the chat right now. What we can share in closing, Raghav and Abhinav, I'd just love for you to share without necessarily calling the client's name, but some of the success stories that we've seen in the region, because they definitely are happening, and also how persons can get in touch with Fluid AI.
Raghav, I think you'd be good at it, better at that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think a couple of areas that we're very excited about has been how some of the Caribbean institutions have really taken this to the next level, right? I think some of the banks and financial institutions that joined us, they started with a single use case. Today they are running over 24 agentic use cases. A lot of them have gone to at least 5 to 6 of them running. So you typically have burning point, a burning business pain, right? It may be in support, it may be onboarding, it may be in employee productivity, it may be an internal use case. But what we really try and encourage Caribbean institutions to do is don't look at it as a point solution, right? This is transformative. So it becomes exciting for us when that same platform then spans the organization, right? You go from that one point solution to saying, hey, how does AI help HR? How does AI help, IT? How does it help, maybe procurement teams to procure faster and better, right? So that's what becomes exciting. And then the best institutions are taking this up to double digits and faster, right? The second thing is, while organizations such as us, we are happy to sort of execute these use cases for you. It's great when we implement the platform, and we've seen Caribbean institutions do that to really take it to the next level where they have their teams start using this as a sandbox, right? They go ahead, build a use case, test it out, and roll it out as well, right? So maybe the more complex ones, they're in working with vendors such as us to help them set up the entire platform, do it end to end for them. But there are a set of 15, 20 smaller use cases, right? Maybe that's just affecting 5 people in the organization, 10 people in the organization. And they're going in as citizen data scientists, citizen data AI agents, and they're building these agentic flows. So that's something that we're very excited about, wherein It's empowering the non-IT side of Caribbean organizations to then build these helper agents, these helper agentic flows, which really power them. So to reach out to us, happy to, I'll just put out our email IDs in the chat. Happy for anyone to sort of drop us a note, or obviously Nadeen, they can just reach out to you as well, and we can connect. We are excited to. We've been doing a lot in the region, and I think there's an opportunity for a lot of institutions out here to sort of leapfrog very quickly.
Thanks, Rakov. Thanks, Abhinav. I've dropped my email in the chat as well. And of course, you can find all of us on LinkedIn platforms through our names. We're excited to continue to support organizations in the Caribbean to leapfrog technical debt and challenges with digital transformation, leveraging generative and agentic AI solutions. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.